One of the great antagonistic promises that Hunter x Hunter left us was Gyro, the most mysterious enemy and one of those who showed the greatest potential, both in complexity of the character, as well as in physical strength and nen. A character that Togashi himself prophesied that one day he would cross paths with Gon. The childhood of this character was hard, to say the least, perhaps brutal would be a better term. This beginning led him down paths of hatred and resentment that forged his character in a specific direction. His goals became about how he could harm the humanity that hurt him so much. When he was a child, Gyro's father had him under a strict life of rules and beatings, but above all extreme treatments. This man instilled in him a prohibition. I call it so because it was not a simple order that a father gives to a son for his own good. This order was colder, more authoritarian, and without the good of the child in mind. The prohibition was to never bother others. At first, the child misunderstood this prohibition, and assumed it was something good, something to protect him from getting into trouble. However, the prohibition was intended for Gyro's father to be the one who would never get into any trouble. He didn't want to have to deal with the normal issues that a father has to help his son with. This man had virtually no interest in his son, there was no emotional bond, so the ban was his way of telling him that he wanted nothing to do with him. Besides separating him completely from his father, the prohibition of not bothering anyone also distanced Gyro from the rest of humanity. This rule made him feel external to society. Everyone else had the right to participate, to give their opinion and even to make mistakes, but Gyro was absolutely forbidden to be part of these interactions. And the threat of an alcoholic and angry father kept him terrified of breaking this rule. The most important being in his life, the only one who was supposed to take care of him, basically told him that he had no right to participate in what everyone else had. Gyro quickly began to feel like an isolated being. Even though he had the same genes, he was not part of the human world even in the most basic matters. Furthermore, from what we could see, the life of everyone in that area was one of extreme poverty and abuse with virtually no consequences. That is, it was not just Gyro's home that was falling into abuse, his entire community was ravaged by poverty and lack of morality. We were told that the job he was forced into, a construction company with terrible working conditions, made Gyro a very rational and productive man. These qualities he would apply later in life but now following his own plans. In time, Gyro came to realize that his father did not have the little interest and love that he thought he had. He finally realized that the rule of not bothering anyone was based on infinite selfishness. This led him to create a new conviction, one stronger than the previous one, this time based on his own self-interest and one that, it seems, is as formidable as the conviction of characters like Gon. Gyro decided to go from not bothering anyone, to doing as much damage as possible to the whole world. This was his new objective and from it, he did everything necessary to apply it in the most effective way possible. His first task under this new life was to assassinate his father, the man who had destroyed all possibility of happiness and dignity in his life, and from this act, Gyro's tenebrous ferocity was unleashed and continued to grow. The play explains that Gyro created a new country, one that was isolated in many ways from the rest of the world. In addition to creating this country, he also organized the criminal group that operated from the shadows. That is, he made himself both the leader of the government of his new country, as well as the leader of the underworld. Since we have not seen the full story of this character, we do not know specifically how far his plans would go. However, we saw that he orchestrated the creation of a new drug terribly harmful and addictive, but he did not create it to get rich, but in order to spread his own poison around the world. Little by little, individual by individual, his drug would create new addicts and problems in the society of each country. Gyro became one of the most promising villains for several reasons. One of them was that this character has an extraordinary charisma. Despite his strong hatred towards the world, at the same time he is a man with a great ability to be a guide and example for other characters who also feel hatred towards society. Gyro is a born leader, he shows a fearful darkness but also a welcoming one. His evilness attracts more broken and angry characters, humans seeking revenge. Furthermore, Gyro was not at war with friendship. Through the character Welfin, we could understand that he and Gyro maintained a friendship in their own way. For example, they liked to compete to prove who had the most destructive and miserable childhood. They used those terrible experiences to empathize and form bonds. The other Chimera ants we saw talking about Gyro also remembered him with admiration, respect and, perhaps, even affection. The will of this character is definitely another aspect to consider. The fact that he was able to resist being consumed and absorbed into the hive mind of the ants is impressive. No other character was able to do this from the get-go. Gyro's spirit and individuality are irrepressible. There were no Chimera ant genes that could take away his ambition. This conviction was so impossible to restrain, that the other ants who remembered him were absolutely certain that their leader had escaped and had begun his plan to harm mankind from scratch. In this, 2. Gyro's extraordinary patience and flexibility can be seen. After years of carefully preparing his plans, everything collapsed due to the bad luck of having been in the country invaded by the Chimera ants. But it is explained to us that Gyro would raise his empire again. He would travel and find new allies with patience and ferocity. Gyro turned his misery, pain and hatred into fuel to create an empire and enlist people similar to himself. When the Chimera ants attacked Gyro's country, we could see that this leader sent his troops to stop them. He did not abandon his people, nor his country. Let's remember that this country also had thousands of people who wanted to live in nature and who were not involved with Gyro's crimes. Gyro chose to fight against these invaders, to defend the citizens and his organization, and when the ants finally invaded his hideout, Gyro stood his ground, faced the invaders and chose to die with his soldiers rather than escape the country, as he probably could have done if he had wanted to. We finally saw him die sitting in his chair. There was no sign that he had tried to run, in my opinion, giving us to understand that his conviction was not broken even when facing certain death. He simply waited for it calmly, accepting that this was the end of his journey. But, to everyone's surprise, Gyro's death and his men were assimilated and reincarnated in the bodies of new Chimera ant soldiers, and Gyro's darkness and determination were not extinguished. This new life of Gyro's, in a way, quite matched his hatred for humanity. As I said, since he was a child, Gyro felt separated from humanity. He didn't see himself as one of them. And now, being a new organism with ant genes, that separation from humanity reached a new level. This time, Gyro literally stopped being a human. I think this makes this character even more dangerous. Gyro can now see himself as a superior species, and make his contempt for humanity in general even deeper. In addition, having a Chimera ant body makes it immediately stronger than that of a human. All the ants that retained their human memories had enormous talent and potential for Nen control, although the royal guards excelled much more. In reality, the other high-ranking soldiers also achieved remarkable strength and Nen application in a matter of days or weeks, which would take a normal human on average months or years. In other words, Gyro will be a threat to consider in terms of his physical strength and Nen strength. With all this, Gyro remains one of the most interesting and enigmatic villains in the world of Hunter x Hunter. A character that many consider to be an evil god, and by the same token, a massive threat to the world once he develops his potential. Also, the connections of this character can be quite interesting. For example, we were told that after being turned into a Chimera ant, Gyro headed to Meteor City to start over, meaning there might be a connection between the Gene Raiden and Gyro's forces. We've also seen other characters in the most recent Dark Continent arc that pretty much share the same goal as Gyro. I'm referring to Morena and her followers, who seek to sow chaos and destruction in the world simply for the pleasure of doing so. It seems to me that it's also possible that they have some connection to Gyro. The underworld of Hunter x Hunter is vast and interconnected. The terrorists and thieves of Meteor City, the serial killers like Hisoka, the different factions of the Mafia, the corrupt politicians and royalty like the Princes of Kaken, the professional assassins like the Zulks, all know each other and make alliances or have disputes frequently. So Gyro's organization that reached the level of being a country of its own is probably also connected to other criminal groups. Hopefully one day we will see more about this character. In the meantime, what do you think about this character? Leave me your opinion in the comments and thank you for watching this video.